Hi everybody, it's Blood and Plunder Week here on beastsofwar.com, and we have 3 fantastic mega bundles up for grabs. These include the Rulebook, 2 nation packs of your choice, and the cards that you're going to need to get you and a friend into the game. For your chance to win, get your comments in on any of the Blood and Plunder content this week on Beasts of War, Facebook or YouTube. Winners are announced in an upcoming weekender, so stay tuned. Hi everybody, welcome back to Blood and Plunder Week here on Beasts of War. I'm of course joined by the guys from Firelock Games, and in this one we're going to have a little bit of a deeper look at some of the history. So you've given me some nice images here from, I believe there's a particular book you guys really find useful. What was it?
Right, it's the Buccaneers of America.
And this is basically a great source material piece for anyone wanting to get into it.
Right, so it was written by a guy named Alexandre Exquemelin, who actually sailed with a lot of these guys. So he was a surgeon that sailed with the Buccaneers, and he wrote about all their exploits, just a few years after it happened. So it was all fresh in his mind.
Ooh, that's nice. So, to actually have like that first-hand account from the period, I'm guessing that's probably quite rare to find these days.
Yes, especially from this specific place in the world and this time of history. So.
All right, well, you've sent me some nice images here, so let's get stuck straight in. So what have we got first here? Whoa, hello. This doesn't look fun.
So, this gentleman here ripping the heart out of the guy's chest would be Francois Lolonais. He was most definitely a sociopath. He definitely had some sort of mental illness or something going on with him.
It looks like he's feeding the heart to someone else.
He is. So it was common practice for him to once he captured a Spanish town or a ship, he would immediately begin to torture and maim and dismember his victims. Okay. So as you can see here, he was known for, this guy didn't want to reveal any information, so he's cut his heart out and fed it to the other guy to try to get him to talk. So now, he was known to bite the heart and gnaw it up himself too, just to scare and lick. He would lick the blood off of his blade and do all kinds of strange things. And
so this man was, blood hungry, kill hungry.
He really hated the Spaniards. He also really enjoyed taking their money. Okay,
and were there any really famous raids that Lolonais took part in?
He took part in several. I believe he attacked Cartagena, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes I mix up the names here. So, but it should have been Cartagena or Maracaibo. I think he took as well. And he also took part in. He also captured a large Spanish ship out of a bunch of canoes, which is something the Buccaneers did a lot.
So hang on, big ship,
right?
And he and his boys are in canoes.
Yep.
Okay, that takes some guts right there.
So these guys were famous for their ability with their muskets, especially because they had better equipment than the Spanish. So their tactic was to put suppression basically on the gun ports to keep them closed, so they couldn't open them up. Because as you can imagine, if you let loose a broadside from a big ship onto a canoe, it's bad news for the guys in the canoe. That's right. so they just put a fury of fire down on the ship, boarded it, and captured it.
Okay, wow. So, and so it was. So what nationality? I'm guessing French.
He is French. Yes, he led French Buccaneers, and he was operating at the same time as Henry Morgan, and he was starting. He was kind of like the rising star, while Morgan was kind of just getting out on his own. So he got results because of these, crazy, cruel tactics that he's using.
Absolute brutality, but
right, exactly.
For the time period, I'm guessing if it worked, if that money was flowing back to France, they didn't really want to hear about anything else.
He made his men rich, and people would join Buccaneer crews voluntarily. So, if you had the choice of sailing with Morgan or Lolonais, and Lolonais was the guy getting everybody rich, you're gonna sign up with Lolonais. So
makes sense to me.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, what ended up helping Morgan was that Lolonais eventually got kind of overextended himself a bit and ended up being eaten alive by some of the, or so they say anyway, by some of the natives around Nicaragua.
Hang on. So he pulls in somewhere.
Yeah.
The natives get him.
Right.
And it's just like, well, you look tasty.
Yeah. So I kind of think
were there cannibals down around that area?
Not really. So I kind of think it was them kind of like giving him a fitting end, because I think his story was known by then.
He became so famous for it was just like, well,
they roasted him and ate him, according to Exquemelin, but that could have been an exaggeration too. So
well, live by the sword, die by the sword,
right?
Kind of thing. Wow. Okay. Next up, we have another couple of characters here. So who do we have here?
All right. So here we have a portrait of L'Ollonais, which is completely invented. Unfortunately, no real portrait of him exists, but maybe, who knows?
And is this two portraits of him, or is this someone else?
So on this side we have Sir Henry Morgan. So the famous Morgan we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So he was probably the most famous of all the Buccaneers. So of all the Buccaneers, everybody kind of knows Morgan. Could be because of a certain beverage that people are aware of, but he also led
possibly.
He also led probably the biggest, most successful land attack of all the Buccaneers. So he crossed the Isthmus of Panama and captured Panama City, which was like a major power center for the Spanish, and where a lot of the main treasure kind of came in through.
Now, the scale of these battles that would have taken place in history, we're probably talking hundreds of men, yes? We're not talking thousands or tens of thousands, are we?
Generally, you're talking hundreds, but in this case, you're talking thousands. So this was a major... Because at this point, L'Ollonais is out of the picture.
Yeah.
He's been gobbled up.
Yeah.
So now the French are coming and joining Morgan. So he's able to really bolster his force because he's got the Brethren of the Coast going with him. So he's got all the French Buccaneers. He's got the English militia. He's probably got some naval seamen from England as well going along with him, as well as the English Buccaneers. Not to mention all the Dutchmen who kind of mixed in that whole rabble. So he's able to amass a pretty large force. I think over 2,000 if I'm not mistaken.
So I'm guessing back then that's major fighting.
It's probably the largest pirate army ever assembled. So,
Wow. And then, so what happened to Panama City whenever he went for his raid? So he took it?
So the Battle of Panama was kind of interesting. It was pretty one-sided, unfortunately for the Spanish. So they met out on a large plain right in front of Panama City. You've got a large hill on one side where he put a bunch of Buccaneers set up with their sharpshooting abilities put up on the high ground. Spanish cavalry come and charge in. The Buccaneers just cut them down. They had no chance. So the Spanish had some strange plan where they were planning on stampeding cattle across the Buccaneer lines. And what ends up happening is the cattle just kind of hang around the Spanish lines and just get in their way. And the Buccaneers just unleash on them with their crazy musketry, and the Spanish just break and flee.
Yeah.
And they end up burning the town down. They'd rather burn it down than let the pirates have it. So they just go in there and just burn the whole thing to the ground.
So Panama City leveled.
Gone. In fact, Panama City of today is not the original Panama City because of this event.
Really?
There's what they call Old Panama, which Morgan was destroyed because of Morgan.
Yeah. And what, is it in the same geographical location, or is it like 6 miles down the road?
Yeah, it's a few miles away, I believe, something like that.
Oh, that would be a really interesting one to actually visit, is seeing Old Panama City. Is there any of it left standing, walls, things like that?
I believe there's just some ruins. I don't think there's much. It was pretty much destroyed from what I understand. Never been, but...
Someday, dream.
Maybe someday.
Dare to dream.
Yeah, who knows?
If you guys do a massive tournament, maybe hold it in Panama.
That's not a bad idea. That'd be pretty cool.
All right, so next up we have a bit of a raid scene here. So where is this?
Okay, so that would be Panama.
Oh, this is the Panama raid.
There it is.
Okay.
So kind of drawn from a European perspective. You've got pikemen and musketeers and guys with So this is kind of how a typical European battle would be fought. Not so much the case there. Not so much the case of what actually happened. As far as we know, we can't find any evidence the Buccaneers actually carried pikes into battle. The Spanish would have had lances, the shorter pike, somewhat. We know they had pikes in their arsenals, but it seems like they weren't much use, as there wasn't a lot of cavalry on the Buccaneer side. Yeah.
See, this is one thing I find very, very interesting for this part of history. Now, guns have been around for a little bit right now.
Right.
But as with everything, every new piece of military technology and hardware, it always takes a long time for some of the governments and some of the armies to actually really start to integrate them.
Right.
And from the sound of things, the English and the French were starting to get there at this point, starting to get the idea of, lots of guns, good idea. The Spanish, they seem to be a little bit behind. I mean, were they researching new weapons and, better guns and stuff at this particular period, or what?
So this is kind of like the height, or this is where the pike and shot era starts really transitioning into the black powder period. So what you've got is in Europe, the pike is still important because of the cavalry charges, right? So you've got the cuirassiers, with their heavy armor and pistols and whatnot. So, once you fired your volley and they keep coming, they're just gonna cut you down. So the pike was important basically to protect the musketeers, and also, they'd also charge each other with the pikes and whatnot. But this wasn't so much the case in the New World, where you didn't have the vast expanses like you have here in Europe. So you've got a lot more jungle and you've got a lot more terrain and stuff to fight from.
So cavalry is a lot harder to use.
There's a lot less cavalry, though the Spanish do have quite a bit, and the English and French have some in their militias, and as well as the Dutch, I think. And you've got, but a big part of it is just that it's smaller. So even in Europe, smaller skirmishes of less than 100 men or something like that would generally be primarily between musketeers.
Yes.
So it's kind of the same situation. The scale of combat shrinks a little bit, which makes the pike less of an effective weapon.
The other thing is, I'm sure some of these guys are probably still walking around with, chest plates, armor, and stuff like that. But at this stage, were the guns becoming powerful enough to actually just punch through that armor and sort of take it out of the picture as well?
Generally, yeah. You didn't see a lot of guys armored in the New World, primarily because of the heat. So the heat would have been an issue. You'd probably see some commanders out there and dressed in plate, a little bit of plate at least. But,
but that's more ostentation than anything else.
Probably, yeah.
Like there has to be stories about commanders having bad days in armor out there. I'm sure you guys will probably know them or whatever. But I always find it very, very interesting to see that transition of the technology of war and the actual style of warfare. Next up, we have a couple more images for the show today. So what are we seeing here?
All right, so here's the aftermath of a raid by Morgan. I'm not sure which town this is in, but this is supposed to be Morgan. And as you can see, he's interrogating a few Spaniards here, and they're trying to. You could see them torturing this poor guy over here.
Whoa!
So, yeah, over here on the left. So they're basically trying to. At this point, this may have been the point where he's starting to take a little bit of note from L'Aulnay's book.
Okay.
Although Morgan sees himself as kind of an English gentleman.
Yeah.
He's trying to rise to the ranks. Yeah. So he's not super inclined to kind of go in the barbarous torture direction.
Yeah.
But he's got to get results too, because he needs his men to follow him. So he's kind of trying to find a middle ground, I think.
So is this him maybe going, where have you hidden the gold in the town?
Basically, yeah. So they're interrogating them to get, because what would happen is, as the Buccaneers would attack, the citizens of the town would get all their goods and run off into the woods and hide it somewhere, dig a hole. Yeah. So a lot of it was hidden away, and you'd really have to extort it out of them. A lot of times they'd get important people in the town, priests, bishops, governors, things like that, and hold them for ransom from other townspeople. Or even the town itself was sometimes held for ransom.
Well, an entire
town to be burned, yeah. So they basically say, pay the ransom, we're burning the town to the ground. So
it seems like a plan that would work, especially in
They got results most of the time.
Yeah. Okay, and our last image, what are we seeing here? Is this another mid-battle scene or something?
Yep, so this would be a battle scene. Then I wish I could remember for the life which battle it was right now. But this is the battle, I believe, where there's two fortresses they're trying to take. This is one of Morgan's early attacks. You can see the men climbing the ladders there over the... So in this battle, Morgan gets especially ruthless.
Right.
And he is... So the Spanish are holding out in one fortress in the town. And they can't quite get to breach it. So they can't, they don't have, the Buccaneers don't have any artillery or anything like that. So what they generally do is they just throw grenades over the wall. Yeah. So they get guys to run out. Generally the Forlorn Hope will go out to the front of the fortress and just start lobbing grenades and clearing it out so they can put the ladders. Yeah. But it's just not working. So what they decide to do is they get old women, they get nuns, they get priests, they get monks and such, like people like that.
I'm nervous. This sounds like it's going to be brutal.
Yeah. So they have them carry the ladders, the siege ladders. So they have them carry the siege ladders forward, and the Buccaneers march in behind them. And their thinking is that, hey, if the Spanish do decide to fire on them, they're killing their own men. We don't mind those losses. So the Spanish commander makes a decision, fires on them. They take some casualties, but eventually they do storm the fort that way.
Well, I suppose if you don't have the numbers and you can force civilians to do it, yes, it's horrifying and it's terrible, but
and
if it works,
he specifically chose people that they would feel really bad about attacking.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Now, here's a question for you. In this time period, were there many fortifications built? Big, I'm talking like big castellos and stuff.
Yeah. So this is the one thing the Spanish seem to be willing to splurge on. They wouldn't equip them well, and they wouldn't equip their men well, but they did build forts all over the place. Even in St. Augustine up in North Florida, it's a pretty minor outpost for the Spanish, but it was raided consistently, and they built even a major fortress there. I mean, major by the standards of North America. Yeah. But the castles in Cuba and Puerto Rico and some of their other larger establishments are much, much larger and much more significant. But still, the fact that they spent the money on a massive fortress you know, they did have them everywhere.
Yeah, and would there be any of these still surviving today if someone actually, you know, wanted to go out and visit one?
Oh yeah, they're pretty much any place where there was a Spanish town of any significance at all, there's probably a fortress there.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now that could be an interesting one to actually do some research on, guys. If you can get some images and stuff of it to actually build those into your gaming tables, because that's one of the other things about this game. I'm expecting to see some gorgeous sort of coastline tables or inland tables and things like that. You know, even sea tables and stuff. I cannot wait to see what people start coming up with for this game, just because it's such a beautiful topography.
And we're going to come out with some forts pretty soon. They're in the works right now, so we're going to be releasing some kits for that. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, guys, drop your comments in below. Are you interested in this time period? It sounds like it's fascinating and absolutely wonderful to actually get into this world and actually see who those major players were. You know, some of the nasty things they got up to, because this does not exactly sound like, you know, a very friendly place to live. It sounds as if you're flying by the seat of your pants most days, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, guys, get those comments in below. We will move on. We will see you in the next one. Hi, everyone. We hope you're enjoying this themed week. Make sure you don't miss any of it by checking out the playlist, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to ding our dong so you don't miss any of our videos. Also, come across and join us on beastsofwar.com for more great gaming content and a fantastic community. Also, get your comments in for your chance to win.